Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. The Agnipath scheme was announced by the Indian government in June 2022. Now, since its inception, it's faced criticism. These criticisms have been regarding job security, pension benefits, and more importantly, the overall effectiveness of the Agniveers in the armed forces. In the just concluded parliament session, there was a heated debate between opposition leader Rahul Gandhi and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh over the compensation paid to an Agniveer who had lost his life in the line of duty. And today I have with me a guest who has stressed the importance of maintaining a youthful army and who has said that Agniveers who have joined the army are performing well. He's emphasized that enrollment of youth in the Indian army strengthens its ability to defeat enemy forces. Let me introduce to you the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh, Brigadier Dr. B.D. Mishra. And joining me is my colleague Deepak Badana in the News9 Plus studio. Brigadier Mishra, I am fully aware of the fact that Ladakh is possibly the only place on earth where there are three nuclear armed rivals facing off against each other. You have a hostile Pakistan to your west, and now post 2020, you have a hostile China to the north. And this is possibly where the China-Pakistan nexus plays out on the ground. So I think you are the best person today to answer this question on military effectiveness, given the fact that you've been in service for several decades and you're also the man on the ground in Ladakh. Tell us why you believe that the Agnipath scheme for short-term induction of soldiers has attracted so much controversy.
I think it has started all from its time of announcement, and in that the lead was taken by some coaching center and people like that. Then it caught the fancy of politicians. They also thought that there is one issue which they can trumpet, and in that there will be so many other people who can join the line. Probably that is the reason. Second reason is that all those who are creating this controversy, probably they know, to my mind of thinking, they know the entire thing, its merit, its value, how it is good to the country. They know all that. But even then, they are saying things which are not correct. So, to my way of thinking, creating controversy about army issues, particularly army recruitment, particularly so many soldiers who have gone there, and telling them that, look, you are not safe, telling them that you are in disadvantage, telling them that, look, it is a cheating being done to you. I think this is against the interest of the nation.
Absolutely. Politicization of the armed forces, Brigadier Mishra, is something that we should avoid. And, I was looking at the facts. Now, there are 57 countries, including Russia, Singapore, Turkey, UAE, Greece, and Sweden, who have short-term military service from 9 months to 2 years. And I'm also aware of the fact that between 1947 and 1971, the Indian Army fought 5 wars with soldiers who were engaged for 7 years or less. So why are we in 2024 saying that they will not be effective, that we need to have soldiers for longer tenures? Are there two different issues that we are talking about over here?
No. Issue is only one, and that is the nation. That is the defense of the country. Issue is only one. But how people are trying to exploit it in a different way. I'm asking a very simple question. The question is that if your army has to be young, then you have got to devise some means by which army remains young. And if your army is young, then naturally fighting capability of the army will be better. If your army is young, then the motivation of the soldiers will be much more. I'll give an example. As you say, after 1962 war, Indo-China war, on which China attacked India, I was in that war. Short Service Commission came, the Emergency Commission came. Then there was 1965 war, there was 1971 war, then there was Kargil war. If you take the entire gallantry award index, you'll find that short service commission officers, they fought so well, they got gallantry, top gallantries. Now, if that is so, then the question does not arise that a man who has been trained for 3 years, 2 years, 1.5 years, and a man who has got leader who are there, young people, and then he has got regiment, he has got battalion, he's got a complete group, and then he will not fight for the country because his terms are not there. It is ridiculous. And I'm very positive about the whole thing. The whole thing is probably criticism for the criticism's sake, opposition for the opposition's sake, lack of support for the different kind of logic. But what damage is being done, that those people don't know. They are very responsible people who are talking about it, talking against it. Do you want your army soldiers to have a question mark in their mind? Are you creating that question mark which will benefit the country, which will benefit the nation, which will benefit the defense of the nation? The idea is being planted. Why should they fight? I meet all these people because I have got very close contact with the army. Recently, yes. I visited 7th Battalion of the Madras Regiment, which I had commanded. And the Agniveer people, I interacted with them. I found them full of motivation. They are doing so well. Commanding officer was saying that they are doing very well. Now, right. The doubt is being created in their mind, which is not fact, not based on fact. Can Defense Minister make in Parliament a statement which is wrong? Can that ever happen?
Brigadier Mishra, the comparisons are being drawn to this politicization that in a decade ago you had the BJP that took up the issue of one rank, one pension when the UPA was in power, the Congress-led UPA was in power. And today, 10 years later, you have the Congress now taking up the Agnipath issue, opposing it, saying it should be scrapped. Is it like a tit for tat, or do you think that they're two completely different issues?
No, the history is different. In 2014, before general election, Modi ji had come, I think it was at Rewari,
yes.
that he addressed ex-servicemen.
Yes.
And in that, he was given a request that, look, sir, we are not having we are not having pension. It is not OROP. It is differentiation. So he said, when my government comes,
yes,
I will do it. He did not raise the question. No, he did not raise the question. It was a request given to him. And let me tell you about OROP one thing. You'll be surprised what I revealed to you. When I retired in 1995, my pension was 1800 rupees per month. I had college-going children, 2 of them. And it was very difficult as to how to manage. But after OROP, in 2017, when I became governor of Arunachal Pradesh, when I got my first pay, my pay was only 6,000 rupees more than my pension. Today, no ex-serviceman can say
yes.
that he cannot live within his pension unless he has got bad habits.
Right.
Unless he is spendthrift. Has somebody talked to anybody about it? Those who are saying that. Now, this OROP thing, it was not an issue taken up by anybody because that issue was for 47 years.
Yes.
It was not addressed. It didn't come in any way that we are taking up the issue. It came that yes, we'll do something about it.
Right.
Something was done. And the advantage is today advantage is that I'm Lieutenant Governor today here.
Yes.
My pension, of course, I discount it, return it to the government because that is the rule. My pension is more than 60% of my pay. Can it happen ever?
60% of Brigadier Mishra, that's an interesting point that you've mentioned, the fact that your pension is more than your pay. And there is a school of thought that believes that the whole point of the Agnipath scheme was to reduce the pension burden on the armed forces, not immediately, but subsequently over decades, over a decade, 15 years from now, that your pension bill will reduce substantially. There's another school of thought which says that why is this being done to the Indian Army? Why should the Indian Army be made responsible for cutting back on pensions and all? What about the other, government, servants who take equally hefty pensions? So what's your take on this? Was Agnipath scheme meant to reduce the pension burden of the armed forces, or was it to give the army a youthful profile, or was it both?
See, in army, people probably, they know it, but they don't want to accept it. In army, the reforms, modifications, developments, and improvements, this is an ongoing process. Agniveer, Agnipath, it is one of those. It is not the main, but it is not the main issue, or it is not the main subject which is being taken up for the overall increase of efficiency of the army, overall cutting edge advantage of the army. It is one of those. Now, keeping the army young, that is very important. So the aim was that army should be kept young. Now you would understand and would agree with me that if army is young, their fighting capability will be very good. Now, what is counter argument being brought is, and very, I think, very incorrectly, that a man, he will think, how many years I'm going to be here, then I go and fight the war. How can that happen? Has it happened? Has it happened after emergency commission? Has it happened after short service commission? And second point is that in the process, if there is some saving which can be put in armament or any other thing, what is wrong with it? And second point is that you would be surprised. In 1962 war, we had only cotton trousers, and we had only Angola shirt, and then we had jersey which has 50% jute and 50% wool.
Right. It was said that the Indian Army lacked everything except courage in 1962.
Yeah. Even higher direction was very faulty. Even higher direction of war was very faulty. At the apex political leadership, very faulty. It was not cared for right from 1948 to 1962. Though the lessons learned from 1948 should have been taken into account. Now, the issue is that the aim of Agniveer, it is very wrongly being portrayed.
Right.
For a country, India is no more poor country.
Yes.
We have gone from 12 ranking to 5. We are going to be number 3 in the world.
Yes.
India is not a poor country. But India certainly needs better army. India certainly needs young army. Do you know that if anybody, or civilian or anybody, looks at an army man, he or she calls him Jawan.
Yes.
You know that army men are known as Jawan. Why? Because they are supposed to be capable. They are supposed to be daring. They are supposed to be gallant. And how it comes and in whom it comes in a Jawan. And Jawan means young.
Right.
So, such a big project and such a good project, if it is being taken out and army is being demoralized and effort is being made to put question mark in the mind of those people on whom we are depending for the defense of the country.
Yes.
It is sad.
Absolutely. But Governor Mishra, there is another viewpoint which some very respected veterans have put out, which is that given India's challenges of a two-front war and Ladakh, where you are speaking to us from presently, faces both these adversaries, and all our contested boundaries are in the high altitude regions, in the Himalayan regions. Mountains swallow troops, they say. The kind of warfare that you would need to fight possibly with one or two of these adversaries will need large numbers of manpower, soldiers, and that is something that the Agnipath might not be doing, because it's actually cutting down the size of the Indian army. You're bringing it down to lesser than what it was, whereas the threats have increased in the last 4 years particularly. What's your response to that?
Army strength is decided, it is pegged, it is by act of parliament. Recruitment takes place according to that. And if you are saying that, look, 100% people are taken and 75% people go out, only 25% remain, and therefore army strength is coming down by 75%. No, that is not that. The matching recruitment always takes place, and the number which is pegged, it is being tried to keep that number, despite the fact that Agniveer people and Agnipath recruitment that has got retrenchment, or that has got this depletion of strength, that is being catered for. It will not be so that Agnipath, when it comes, Agniveer, when they come, 75% people will go back, and therefore 25% army will be only there. No, it is wrong idea. The recruitment is so being planned that army strength is kept despite the moving out of 75% of Agniveer, from the forces. It will not be that army strength will come down. Army strength, there is a total recruitment directorate. They are planning day in and day out that our recruitment should be maximum. Even for officers, there is deficiency of officers.
Yes.
But there is no Agnipath in that one, no? Still there is deficiency, because the selection criteria, the standard of selection, that is kept absolutely undiluted. So due to that, there is shortage, but that also is being filled.
Right.
And second point is that the match between the manpower and match between the machine and manpower, that has got to be kept very optimum in Indian Army.
Right, absolutely.
It is not only man who fights, it is
Yes.
a man who fights and who is behind the machine.
Right. So, Governor Mishra, do you believe that the Agnipath scheme in its present form is absolutely fit for purpose, and there's no changes whatsoever that are required in this? Or do you believe, like what the Indian Army thinks, that there are some changes that need to be brought about in it? If so, what are your views on this?
See, there's nothing which does not require improvement. Even our own body, we do exercises. Why do we do it?
What are the improvements you would suggest for the Agnipath scheme?
Actually, I have not. I will not venture into that.
Right.
Because they are experts.
Yes.
Army headquarters and actually CDS, Army headquarters, Naval headquarters, and Air Force headquarters. They are studying all that, and they
Right.
are working it out as to what should be the nuts and bolts, what should be the nitty-gritty in all matters: the tenure, the retention, the percentage, the advantages, the disadvantages, their training, their duration of hand-on training. All these are being studied. But what I'm not liking, what I'm really opposing tooth and nail, that this controversy has been started without any reason. This controversy has been started to actually sabotage Indian Army people. This controversy has been started to make a dent in the efficiency of the Indian Army. And this controversy has been started to mitigate the extent of the defense required for our country. That is what I'm opposing. There might be some people, even from armed forces, who may have a different glass, colored glass, to look at it. Or they may have some alignment. They may have some alignment. But if you take it this way, that anything concerning Army, Navy, or Air Force.
Yes.
It cannot be thrust on them because they are responsible for the defense of the country.
Absolutely.
Why will they accept a thing?
Yes.
Why will they accept a thing which is going to mitigate their performance?
Absolutely. Well said. Yes.
More so in the defense of the country. It doesn't suit the nation.
Right.
So I think all this, one must think that nation comes first, nation security comes first, and politics comes, I think, last.
Absolutely. Nation comes first, the nation's security comes first, and that was Governor Mishra, Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh, for you talking to us on why he believes that the Agnipath scheme in its present incarnation is absolutely fit for purpose. It might require changes, but let the armed forces decide. As they have so far, this is a scheme that the armed forces have proposed, and this is a scheme that they've implemented. So whatever changes that need to be done, leave it to the armed forces. Governor Mishra, thank you very much for joining us on the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you.
5 army personnel were killed and 6 injured after terrorists attacked a military convoy in the remote area of Jammu and Kashmir's Kathua district. This is the second attack on the army in the past 48 hours, and 24 hours after 6 terrorists were killed across 2 separate encounters in Jammu and Kashmir's Kulgam district. Now, beginning from the 9th of June, south of the Pir Panjal, we've seen a rise in terror attacks. But what has been a huge area of concern is the kind of weapons and equipment the terrorists have been carrying. They've come armed with American M4 carbines, thermal imagers, night vision devices. But the most important recent find are the ultra sets that the militants have been carrying with them. Highly encrypted Chinese telecom gear, ultra sets as they're called. These are hybrid VHF, UHF net radios. This is military grade communication stuff. This is not the kind of equipment that you can buy off the shelf or just pick up from somewhere. Now, encrypted communication has been a part of Pakistan's deep state games. Let's not forget, in Mumbai 26/11, 16 years ago, terrorists brought with them voice over internet phones. And in Jammu today, 2024, it's ultra sets. How important are these communication sets, and how are they a game changer in the terrorists' war against the state? To discuss with me, I have today with us Colonel KPM Das, National Cyber Security Officer at Cisco, and of course my colleague Deepak Badana joins us in the News 9 Plus studio. Colonel Das, welcome to the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you very much.
I want to start by showing you some of the equipment that was recently captured from the terrorists in Jammu. Explain to us what we are looking at here and why is it different from anything that we've seen in the recent past. These are the so-called ultra sets that you see there. That's the complete unit that was recovered from some of the terrorists in Jammu recently after an encounter.
So essentially, this is for a classic remote, out of area, off-grid, long-term mission. Yeah.
Right.
And these are typically to be carried by not one soldier. It's going to be shared by a group of soldiers or personnel.
Right.
And if you break it down further, even the look and feel that you see.
Yes.
First, size, weight, and power swap.
Yes.
It classically looks like a military product.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ruggedized. That's what it appears. It seems.
It is ruggedized,
yes.
or it is semi-ruggedized. And second, you have the handset. You'll notice is very lightweight.
Yes.
Easy to carry, easy to handle. And you look at the keypad, it's very user friendly.
Yes.
And potentially that is the interface between the person, in this case a terrorist,
Yes.
and the network. So between the person handling it and the network, then you have some subsystems that you can see.
Right.
One, of course, is the radio, which is inside this device,
Yes.
and that needs power,
Right.
and it needs power over a long period of time. You can't have charging cycles as frequent as 4 hours or 6 hours. It needs to last at least 12 to 24 hours.
Right.
And therefore you have a charging system which has come with it. That's going to be carried separately. It is possibly going to have a shoulder strap to help you carry it. And what you see along with it, before I get to the enclosure, what
Yes.
you see along with it are those little pieces of devices. Devices. Sometimes in one of the models, for when you need to have encryption, is to carry a key, a hardware key,
Right.
which is inserted, and then you sometimes call it the crypto gun,
Yes.
which actually loads the keys.
Right.
The keys hold the real, piece of intelligence in an encryption channel. The other thing that you find are multiple interfaces to the left.
Yes.
That's an interface cable, and that when you open the box, potentially, I've not seen it opened.
Yes.
You could potentially even have a video interface,
Right.
or you could have a photography interface. You could also have a data interface. You could even have a storage device,
Right.
where you take a video and store it there. Sometimes videos are very heavy, they
Yes.
can't go over the air, and therefore you save it. So,
So,
in summary,
yes.
this is broadly the components of the system.
So this is basically a military-grade communication set that would be carried by small teams of commandos and special forces operators. That's the kind of equipment that we're talking about here.
That's right. And mil standard because they're going to operate in all kinds of terrain.
Right.
And you see this antenna, it's a very abnormal piece of work.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's very likely this radio comes with multiple antennas.
Right.
Right. It could even have a ground plane antenna, provided the operation is going to last, and they want to put up an antenna on top of a, building that they've occupied or a mountain top. So it's possible that those foldable stuff is inside the suitcase.
Right, and this allows this team of terrorists who are operating in the rugged regions of Jammu to communicate with their handlers without being intercepted. Is there any way of intercepting the signal that this handset generates?
Yeah. So if you look at how radios communicate, right? Over the air, what you have is plain. What you'll see when you monitor is you'll see signals, radio signals.
Yes.
It'll have frequencies, it'll have amplitude, and it'll have some other characteristics. Yeah.
Right.
But what goes on the air these days?
Yes.
Everything is encrypted, and this is a digital radio. It's not an analog radio. It's a
Right.
digital radio.
That's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which implies that whatever you speak, or you write, or you show is converted into data, very often into IP kind of packets. There are other protocols as well other than
Yes.
IP. And then it gets encrypted through an encryptor. Very often the encryptor could be a hardware chip inside the radio. And in some cases there are phones, I don't think this is that kind, there are phones where it can even be, you can deliver the keys over the air.
Right.
Where you can deliver the keys over the air instead of putting a gun into it.
Right. Absolutely.
And on top of it all, you can have frequency hopping, you can have direct sequence spread spectrum.
Right. So it's
There are other
extremely,
methods
in short, Colonel Das, because you know your stuff very clearly. You worked on the Indian Army's Sathi handheld program, PDA, many years ago. That was way ahead of its time. So this is stuff that is possibly the most radical communication stuff that we have seen in 3 decades of insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir?
Absolutely. And it is very likely inside that box there's also a tablet or a small phone.
Right.
It could be running Android or Linux, right? Which also is a very useful interface to use because, common users are normally, and it very likely these are not military personnel. These are, transformed, people who are civilians who've been trained.
Yes.
So you will have very familiar Android interfaces.
Right.
Through a tablet or a small little phone.
Right.
Which can be used for messaging, a lot of other things. You want to mark a map, for example, you can't do it on this phone, right?
Yes.
You can mark it on that small little device.
On that tablet. Deepak, any surprises here? Terrorists staying ahead of the security forces? I was talking to a few veterans who've served in Jammu and Kashmir for several years, and they were telling me that back in the day, you had the militants walking around with Kenwood shortwave radios, and those were way ahead of what the security forces had at that time, 20 years ago.
I think what we're seeing is a rehash of what happened in the early 90s
Yes.
at the highest, when terrorism was at its peak in
Yes,
the valley.
yes.
What we're seeing today is that, they have thermal imagers, night vision
Yes.
cameras.
We saw
which-
that. You've done videos on that,
We
explainers.
did, I think, several explainers on that.
Right.
And what we are seeing is that there is a steadfast intensification of
Right.
these cases.
Right.
However, so far, if you look at data,
Yes.
it is not quite up to those, the data doesn't quite hold up to the fact that terrorism is increasing.
Right.
What we're seeing is the beginning of perhaps a new phase of terrorism.
Beginning of a new phase of terrorism. That's an interesting observation, Deepak, and I'm going to ask Colonel Das this. Colonel Das, we were talking about how the terrorists, this new wave of terrorism that we're seeing in Jammu over the last month or so, much better equipped than the ones in the past. They've got all of this American equipment, M4 assault rifles that have thermal imagers, night vision devices, and now these encrypted mill-grade radio sets. What's a counter to this? I mean, how can the security forces literally stay ahead of technology jumps like this?
So there are two things here. Okay, before that, I want to make a comment that unlike earlier decades,
Yes.
the delta between military technology and commercial technology has been narrowing.
Right.
Yeah. So there are poor man's alternative to mill standards,
Yes.
equivalent. In fact, IP67, which is an industrial standard, is very good. You can use it in a lot of military situations, right? But coming to your question proper, what can we do, right? One is to acknowledge that the envelope has changed.
Right.
Yeah. So it is not a military versus military or a civilian versus civilian kind of. This is a very hybrid environment.
Right.
So the profile of equipment, which includes munitions and electronic stuff, is going to be of a grade which is far superior.
Yes.
And if you look at this equipment in particular, it also tells you that this is a high-stake mission for people.
Right.
You can't churn this out in thousands. I know for sure. I mean, look at our procurement, cycles and policies and the cost. To have thousands of these is not possible. So these are very selective pieces of equipment, tailored for a very, very selected role for a definite time period, and to be used by very skilled, very well-trained people. So one is to acknowledge. The second is,
Yes.
I think there's a challenge today that much of technology capacity at the national level, and that happens in most countries, lie outside the military space.
Right.
Okay? So you have organizations like the NTRO, you have organizations like, the DRDO and all of that. These are strategic assets.
Right.
They don't have a tactical footprint.
Yes.
Okay? Now this is a gap that we need to bridge, figure something out, build some centers of excellence at the tactical level. I'll go back to a very good example. When counterinsurgency began,
Yes.
we realized that the training which goes on in, Cat A establishments and Cat B establishments are not good enough. So
Right.
then we built this whole concept of core battle schools and div
Yes.
battle schools, which are very close to the kind of operation required in that particular sector
Right.
by that particular formation. That is that final 30%. And that 30% is going to make a difference. And same thing applies to technology. Now,
Right.
if you were to intercept this and you see it on a scope and you say, this is something I need immediate action on.
Right.
I need to put my EW resources and try all we can to break whatever is there, right? There are methodologies available. They are very, very
Yes.
complex. They require a lot of compute, a lot of
Right.
storage. Now, these are not available at the tactical echelons. These are available in the strategic echelons, not even
Right.
in the operational echelons.
Right.
So I think there needs to be a complete relook at how we address this. Clearly, there's a roadmap, and it's a cat and mouse game.
Right, absolutely. It's you know, it's a wake up call, Deepak, as Colonel Das said, that it's a cat and mouse game, and I think the mice in this case are getting smarter and you know, being equipped with state of the art stuff. And you know, the point of discussing these military grade radios that we've discovered is that I don't think communication gets the kind of attention that it deserves.
Yeah.
We focus on the small arms, we focus on the grenades and the guns, but then the kind of capabilities that these kind of comsets give terrorists like this, as Colonel Das so brilliantly put it, that you could analyze the mission profile of a terrorist outfit that came equipped with these kind of radios. That's changing, isn't it, now with the war in Ukraine?
Oh, absolutely.
It's an EW war, as a lot of people have been calling it.
I think more important than anything is that we must ready ourselves for this new phase that has started. For very long, the idea was that terrorism has been beaten, and
Yes.
so there were calls to pull out troops from this
Yes.
region. You know, a number of them have gone to the Chinese border now. I think India will have to, you know, make, or we'll have to be ready for a new phase
Yes.
of confrontation.
Possibly a new phase of confrontation, and that could well be the objective of these new attacks in Jammu, to keep the Indian army tied down there and not move troops across to Ladakh to face off against the Chinese. That could well be the name of the game. But Colonel Das, closing comments. The war in Ukraine has, as we were discussing, has thrown up the kind of communication technologies that we didn't believe existed in the past. And one of them, one of those game-changing comm technologies is Starlink, that you have these communication handsets that rely on this network of thousands of satellites, which the Russian military has had to kind of invest considerable resources in kind of intercepting. Do you believe that this is going to be the future of conflict, really? Advanced communication systems which miss the gaze of the normal military you know, minds, because simply because they are not weapons, but they are enablers. They're very powerful enablers. Do you see a reset that's required in the way we look at military grade communications, especially after the kind of equipment that's being recovered from terrorists in Jammu?
Absolutely. So, I mean, just take the Ukraine example, right? For example, I think communications have been front and center of the strategy. Yeah. And like you said, Starlink and all the low orbit satellites have made a
Yes.
huge difference. They just swamp that space in a manner that you don't have any blind spots in the battlefield.
Right.
Now, if you were to carry it into a scenario in J&K, we do have challenges of terrain, all of us know it. And those challenges of terrain, where there are a lot of, you know, dead ground and, you know, all of that, a lot of blind spots, I think potentially the gaps will have to be covered through a complete, you know, a fabric of satellite support.
Absolutely.
But that said, I also want to comment on what you just said. You know, if you traditionally look at the way operations are planned, in that little corner at the end, there will be something
Yes.
called command and electronics. Yeah.
Right.
So, which will be tucked away, very nuanced in one corner, and something almost like an afterthought. I've said this during my service as well. I think it's time to give it the place that it deserves in the mainstream planning and all of that.
Right.
Because it's going to alter the outcomes.
Absolutely. Communications is something that you can not you know, afford to avoid, as Colonel Das so pithily put it. And he's a man who knows the insides out of military communications. He's worked in some of the key projects of the Indian Army. But thank you very much for joining us this evening, Colonel Das, and highlighting this new threat that we are faced with, the threat of military grade hybrid radio sets that the militants are carrying to enable them to create more havoc in Jammu, as they've been doing over the last couple of days. Thanks very much.